Have you ever been in a meeting or even a conversation with friends and noticed that the one who speaks the least somehow commands the most attention? Everyone leans in when they speak. Every word feels heavier, more deliberate, more important. It's not luck. It's not arrogance. It's a secret, the power of saying less. And today, I want to show you why mastering this simple skill can make you look smarter, stronger, and in control without ever trying too hard. The first key point is that silence amplifies your words, and not in a quiet, timid way, but in a way that makes every single thing you say feel heavier, sharper, more deliberate. Think of your words as arrows. When you have too many, they scatter across the sky, some hitting targets, many missing entirely. But when you have fewer arrows, you choose the target carefully, aim with precision, and release with confidence. Each word you speak becomes a marker, a signal that carries weight because it is chosen, not thrown carelessly into the air. There is a kind of invisible power in this restraint, a magnetic energy that draws attention without demanding it. People can feel it even before they understand why. When you speak less, you also give your mind space to breathe. Noise often drowns thought. Endless chatter creates a fog in your own reasoning, leaving your ideas scattered and half-formed. Silence acts like a lens, focusing scattered energy into clarity. You start noticing patterns, catching subtleties in conversations, understanding what matters and what doesn't. The world suddenly seems more vivid. You are no longer just reacting, you are observing, reflecting, and responding with intention. It is a rare kind of strength, quiet yet undeniable, and people instinctively respect it. There's also a strange kind of respect that grows when you choose your words carefully. People have an unspoken sense that someone who speaks little carries a different kind of authority, one built on thoughtfulness rather than volume. It's not about impressing anyone or dominating a room. It's about letting others feel the weight of what you do say. Each sentence becomes a signal, a moment for someone to pause, consider, and really listen. When most people are busy filling silence with noise, you are creating pockets of significance, giving your words room to breathe and settle, and in that space, your influence quietly grows. Every word you hold back becomes a kind of invisible currency. You begin to understand the value of saying something at exactly the right moment of making. It lands so fully that it lingers in someone's mind long after the conversation ends. This is how ideas spread, not through volume, but through resonance. It is the difference between a shout that is forgotten the next day and a sentence that echoes years later. When you learn to guard your words, you create an unspoken expectation that what you speak carries insight, care, and purpose. People listen differently to someone who does not speak without reason. Silence also sharpens your perception of others. When you stop filling space, you start noticing the cracks, the hesitations, the unspoken thoughts that everyone else overlooks. You hear what is said and what is not said. You begin to understand intentions without needing them spelled out. This awareness gives your words precision, because you are responding from understanding rather than assumption. The fewer words you speak, the more informed and deliberate each one becomes. Your quietness is not emptiness, it is preparation, insight, and subtle strategy. In motion, there is a deep inner clarity that emerges from restraint. Speaking less forces you to confront your own thoughts and fears. You notice how often words are used to cover uncertainty, to mask hesitation, to fill awkward silences. When you choose silence instead, you are forced to sit with yourself, to process, to refine your perspective. Over time, you speak less not because you have nothing to say, but because you have learned what is worth saying. Your voice becomes a tool, precise and clean, carrying the kind of authority that comes from self-mastery. Rather than performance, finally, the power of silence lies in its ability to create anticipation. People start leaning in when you do speak, because they sense that something meaningful is about to emerge. There is a rhythm to it, a cadence that draws attention naturally. In a world saturated with noise, restraint becomes magnetic. You learn that your words are not just sound, they are signals, lessons, reflections, invitations. When you speak less, each sentence is an event. It lands, it resonates, And in that resonance, your intelligence, your presence, and your influence are felt long after you have finished speaking. The second key point is that observation is the hidden strength, and it begins the moment you stop speaking to truly see what is happening around you. Most people rush to fill space with words, their eyes barely noticing the subtlety of body language, the half smiles, the fleeting hesitation in someone's voice. But when you pause, when you lean into stillness, you start to notice the undercurrents of human behavior that everyone else misses. You see intentions not just in what is said, but in what is avoided, in the silence that punctuates conversation. Observation becomes your quiet superpower, the ability to understand more than you reveal, to know more than you announce. There is an intimacy in attention that people unconsciously respond to. When you observe deeply, you connect without words. You notice the exhaustion behind a colleague's polite nod, the pride behind a friend's modesty, the unspoken fear behind a confident facade. Most people skim life on the surface, responding only to what is loud and obvious. But when you watch closely, when you pay attention to details others dismiss, you understand motivations, patterns, and hidden truths. This understanding becomes the foundation of influence, because you are never acting blindly. You are acting with insight, with a clarity that few can match. Observation also forces you to slow down, to live in moments rather than racing to respond. In a world obsessed with reaction, this pause is revolutionary. You start to see how rushing diminishes understanding, how the first instinct to speak is often the shallowest, the most surface level. By watching first and responding later, you become the one who sets the pace rather than being swept along. People sense it. There is a quiet authority in someone who is deliberate, whose actions and words appear considered, almost inevitable. It's the difference between being heard and being noticed. And being noticed is where true influence begins. When you cultivate observation, you also cultivate empathy. Seeing beyond words allows you to feel the rhythm of others' experiences, to understand what drives them, what frustrates them, what excites them. Most conflicts and misunderstandings come from people not noticing the subtleties of one another's lives. But when you pay attention, you enter a space where clarity replaces assumption. You begin to respond to the person, not just the words they speak. You learn to read between lines, to sense needs before they are expressed, and in that space, your presence becomes more than a voice. It becomes guidance, support, and quiet influence. Observation sharpens your own say. LF awareness too. As you notice others, you also notice yourself, your reactions, your impulses, your biases. You start to see when you are speaking out of fear or pride, when your words are filling space rather than adding value. There is an honesty in watching life unfold without the constant pressure to participate, an unfiltered mirror reflecting both the world and yourself. This self-clarity allows you to act with integrity, to speak from a place of insight rather than impulse, and to engage in life with a precision that is rare, subtle, and deeply respected. The beauty of observation is that it turns ordinary interactions into a kind of quiet study. Every gesture, every inflection, every pause becomes data, but data with heart. You begin to see patterns, to understand the unspoken rules of social dynamics, to anticipate outcomes without guessing. Others may speak louder, move faster, and chase attention, but you are learning, collecting, understanding. This patience, this willingness to simply notice, becomes a reservoir of wisdom. You are not reacting to life, you are flowing with it, reading it, interpreting it, and knowing when to step in with exactly what is needed. Observation transforms your presence from invisible to magnetic. When you watch more than you speak, people unconsciously start leaning in, drawn by the sense that you understand, that you see, that your mind is quietly active even in silence. There is a confidence in someone who notices what others miss. A gravity in their presence that does not shout but still holds attention. You realize that knowledge without words is still power, and that understanding the world and the people in it can be far more influential than trying to be heard above the noise. Your eyes, your mind, your awareness become instruments of impact, subtle but undeniable, shaping the way the world responds to you long before you ever say a word. The third key point is that confidence speaks louder than volume. And it begins not in the words you utter, but in the stillness behind them. Confidence isn't a performance. It isn't a display meant to impress. It is a quiet knowledge that what you carry inside matters, and that it does not need constant validation. You notice it in people who never rush to fill silence, who move through rooms without announcing themselves, yet somehow every glance lingers, every gesture commands attention. There is a magnetic authority in calm certainty, the kind that makes words feel unnecessary because presence alone communicates intelligence, strength, and clarity. Confidence grows from the willingness to trust yourself before seeking the approval of others. Most people speak loudly because they fear being overlooked, because they doubt whether their thoughts carry weight. But when you cultivate self-trust, you stop reacting to the volume around you. You stop trying to outshout the noise. Instead, you speak deliberately, knowing that each phrase, each sentence will land with precision. People notice this. There is a subtle power in restraint, a sense that when you finally do speak, it is not wasted. Others may talk endlessly, but your words arrive like carefully placed stones forming a bridge. Strong, deliberate, and unshakable, silence and confidence are inseparable companions. When you stop filling every moment with words, people begin to feel your energy before they hear it. They sense a calm that others do not have, a presence that is not desperate to be liked, a steadiness that becomes contagious. This is why confident people rarely feel the need to explain themselves repeatedly or justify every action. They do not need to convince others. Their conviction is visible, palpable, undeniable. The more you embrace this, the more your own fears of inadequacy dissolve, because you realize that worth is not proven by volume, it is demonstrated through authenticity, deliberate action, and quiet assurance. Confidence also requires embracing your imperfections without overcompensation. Most people speak too much to hide doubt, to cover insecurity, to appear flawless. But true confidence does not need disguise. It allows you to be human, to make mistakes, and to remain composed. This subtle courage is magnetic because people instinctively feel it. When you don't rush to defend yourself or explain every nuance, you signal that you are comfortable in your own skin, that you have nothing to prove, and that others can trust your judgment without hesitation. Here is a rhythm in this balance, a quiet strength that draws respect without demanding it. Every interaction becomes a chance to practice this kind of calm authority. You notice how much more people respond to a voice that is measured rather than loud, to a presence that listens and absorbs rather than interrupts. Speaking less does not mean withholding, it means filtering, choosing what truly matters. Confidence allows you to navigate conversations with precision, to offer insight at the right moment, and to let others reveal themselves without feeling the need to dominate. Over time, people begin to remember your words not for their frequency, but for their clarity, relevance, and weight. The more confident you become, the more your inner rhythm guides you. You start noticing the moments when words are necessary and the moments when silence will serve better. People instinctively trust someone who measures their voice because it signals thoughtfulness, experience, and control. There is a quiet reassurance in knowing that not everything needs to be said, that presence alone can communicate depth, and that the energy you carry is more persuasive than the volume you produce. Confidence turns restraint into influence, patience into power, and listening into understanding that cannot be rushed or ignored. Finally, confidence is not about dominance, it is about alignment. It is the alignment of thought, feeling, and action. When you speak less, you are forced to examine what true lie matters to express, and in doing so, your words become sharper, more authentic, and more impactful. People notice this alignment immediately. They feel it in the way you occupy space, the way your gaze meets theirs, the quiet certainty in your tone. Confidence becomes an unspoken language, understood without explanation, felt without hearing, and respected without question. In this way, speaking less does not diminish your presence, it magnifies it, making every word, every gesture, and every pause resonate with undeniable power. The fourth key point is that curiosity creates influence, and it begins the moment You choose to ask instead of assert. Most people rush to fill conversations with statements, opinions, advice, thinking that talking proves intelligence or authority. But real power often lies in the questions we ask, the ones that show we are truly paying attention, that we care enough to understand. Curiosity is magnetic because it shifts the focus from ourselves to others, allowing people to feel seen, heard, and understood in ways they rarely experience. It transforms dialogue from noise into connection, and in that space, influence grows quietly, naturally, almost effortlessly. When you cultivate curiosity, you develop a sensitivity to subtleties others often overlook. You begin to notice not just what people say, but how they say it. The hesitation, the excitement, the unspoken tension. Every question becomes a bridge, a gentle invitation for someone to reveal more of themselves, to share insights that they might have kept hidden. Most conversations are one-way streets, filled with monologues or rehearsed responses. Curiosity turns them into journeys, where listening and asking guide the path, and the person across from you become more open, more engaged, more willing to reveal the depth of their thoughts. Curiosity also disarms resistance. People instinctively guard themselves against judgment, interruption, or unsolicited advice. But when you ask with genuine interest, you bypass that armor. A well-placed question shows humility, attentiveness, and respect, which encourages trust. It allows you to gain understanding without confrontation, to influence without pressure. It is subtle yet profound. People respond to curiosity with authenticity because it taps into a deep human desire to be understood, to have their perspectives acknowledged. It shifts relationships from competition to collaboration, from noise to resonance. The power of curiosity is amplified when paired with restraint. Asking fewer, more thoughtful questions carries far more impact than firing off a rapid series of inquiries. Each question becomes a tool, a carefully placed lever that uncovers insight, encourages reflection, and fosters deeper dialogue. You begin to see the difference between asking to fill silence and asking to illuminate understanding. In that difference lies mastery. Curiosity is not simply idle interest, it is intentional exploration, a subtle way of guiding conversations, learning truths, and building influence. Without ever dominating the space, curiosity also strengthens self-awareness. When you listen to learn, rather than to respond, you confront your own assumptions, biases, and blind spots. Every question asked with genuine intent challenges your own perspective, forcing you to reconsider, reflect, and grow. The act of listening becomes a mirror, revealing not just the other person, but yourself. Over time, this reflective curiosity sharpens judgment, hones discernment, and fosters a presence that feels grounded, thoughtful, and wise. People sense it. They recognize that your questions are not manipulative or performative, but a reflection of someone who sees beyond the surface. Observation and curiosity together create an almost invisible influence. People rarely notice the mechanics of it, they only feel its effects. The room shifts when someone asks questions that matter, when someone listens with attention so complete it almost feels like they are reading unspoken thoughts. Ideas are revealed, emotions are acknowledged, and insight is gained without coercion. Curiosity allows you to guide conversations subtly, to uncover hidden truths, and to shape outcomes in ways that sound effortless but are deeply intentional. It is influence wrapped in empathy, persuasion disguised as attentiveness. Curiosity ultimately becomes a magnet for knowledge, connection, and respect. The more you practice it, the more people naturally gravitate toward your presence, eager to share, reveal, and explore. They respond not because you are louder, sharper, or more forceful, but because you make them feel understood, valued, and capable of expressing more than they ever thought they could. In cultivating curiosity, you discover that influence is not about speaking over others, but about opening doors for them to speak, revealing the unspoken, and in the process, shaping perception, trust, and respect in ways that words alone could never achieve. The fifth key point is that words become tools, not weapons. And this transformation begins when you treat speech as deliberate craftsmanship, rather than a reflex to react. Every sentence you speak carries weight, but most people wield words carelessly, as if their value is endless and consequence is negligible. Imagine words as blades sharp, precise, capable of cutting through confusion or causing harm. When you speak less, when you measure and mold your language, you transform these blades in instruments of clarity, bridges that connect minds instead of walls that separate them. The distinction is subtle, but the impact is immense, because what you say can shape perception, open opportunities, or quietly influence outcomes in ways that shouting never could. Using words as tools requires an intimate understanding of context. It is not enough to know what you think. You must also grasp how it will land, how it will interact with the minds and hearts of those who hear it. Most conversations are filled with uncalculated noise, reactive statements, filler phrases, defensiveness. But when you pause, reflect, and weigh your words, you begin to speak in ways that construct rather than confuse. Each word becomes a lever, a carefully chosen action that moves understanding forward. People start to notice the precision, the care, and the thought behind what you say, and in that noticing, your influence quietly expands. Silence itself becomes part of the toolset. The space between words, the choice to withhold commentary, allow your message to land fully rather than ricocheting off distraction. Words without pause are often wasted. Words delivered with consideration resonate. When you learn to integrate silence into your speech, you control rhythm, tension, and emphasis naturally. People start to feel the weight of your language, not because it is loud, but because it is measured, deliberate, and intentional. Speaking less in this way does not diminish your presence, it magnifies it. There is also a subtle but profound responsibility in using words as tools. Every statement has the potential to shape perception, influence behavior, or alter the course of a conversation. Most people underestimate this power, treating speech as trivial or disposable. But when you speak with the awareness of the effect each word carries, you begin to notice patterns, anticipate reactions, and choose language that aligns with clarity, truth, and purpose. Words are no longer weapons for ego or defense, they become instruments to teach, to inspire, to connect, and to leave a mark that is gentle but undeniable. Mastering this approach requires patience and restraint. You must resist the urge to comment immediately, to fill silence with judgment or reassurance, to respond to every impulse. Instead, you observe, you process, you select. And in that space, you cultivate authority. People naturally defer to the measured voice, not because it dominates, but because it demonstrates thought, control, and respect for the conversation. Each carefully chosen phrase signals awareness and depth, showing that your words are not casual, they are intentional, considered, and capable of shaping perception without forcing it. Using words as tools also refines your own thinking. Speaking less forces clarity in thought before expression. You learn to articulate only what has been fully processed, what carries meaning, and what advances understanding. This practice transforms communication into an act of creation rather than reaction. Ideas no longer scatter across the room like leaves in a storm. They settle firmly, planted with intention, capable of growth, impact, and influence. Over time, this awareness transforms not only the way others hear you, but also how you hear yourself, sharpening discernment, focus, and emotional intelligence simultaneously. Finally, words as tools become instruments of legacy. Every conversation, every exchange is an opportunity to leave a subtle imprint, to create understanding, to inspire reflection. People may forget what was said, but they feel the effect of thoughtful speech long after. Words wielded carelessly fade into noise, but words chosen with care resonate, echo, and shape perception in ways that persist. By treating language as a tool, you reclaim control over influence, over presence, and over the impact you have in the lives of others. Speaking less does not silence you, it sharpens your ability to sculpt reality. With intention, leaving echoes that outlast the moment. The sixth key point is that the pause is your secret weapon, and it begins the moment you resist the urge to rush, to fill the air with words simply to be heard. Most people speak as though silence is a void to be feared, as if every second without sound diminishes their value. But the pause is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the space where meaning gathers, where words gain gravity, where thoughts settle before they are released into the world. A pause allows people to lean in, to listen, to feel the weight of what is coming, and it transforms ordinary speech into something that commands attention without demanding it. Pauses give your mind a chance to choose wisely. Without them, speech becomes reactive, impulsive, scattered. But in the deliberate gap, clarity emerges. You see connections between ideas that would otherwise be lost. And your words carry intention rather than noise. People notice the difference immediately, even if they cannot name it. They feel that what you say is measured, thoughtful, precise. Silence, in this sense, is the invisible frame around a painting. It gives context, focus, and strength to everything it surrounds. The pause makes speech feel like an event rather than an accident. There is also an emotional rhythm created by pause. Life moves fast, and conversation often mirrors that speed, leaving little room for reflection. But when you pause, you create breathing space for others, a moment for them to process, respond, or reflect. It slows the tempo of interaction in a way that is subtle but profound. People respond differently to a voice that integrates silence because it mirrors the natural cadence of thought and emotion. They begin to sense that you are not simply reacting, but present, engaged, and in control of your own energy. Pauses cultivate anticipation. When someone speaks without interruption, every word they do say lands with more impact. People lean forward unconsciously, waiting for the insight, the perspective, the guidance they know will come. The pause becomes a kind of magnet, drawing attention and focus to what follows. It signals that your words are not casual, that they are worth the wait, that you do not speak to fill a void, but to illuminate it. This subtle tension creates an emotional weight that makes communication feel alive, intentional, and unforgettable. The pause also teaches patience in yourself. Most of us rush because we fear judgment, fear being overlooked, fear that silence equals weakness. But when you allow the pause, you practice self-trust, the belief that your voice matters precisely because it is not constant. You begin to recognize the power in restraint, the strength in measure, timing, and the authority that comes from knowing when not to speak. Each pause becomes a small act of mastery over impulse, a quiet demonstration of control that people sense instinctively even before you speak again. Silence in conversation amplifies observation as well. In the gaps, you notice what others are feeling, thinking, and withholding. You see hesitation, enthusiasm, doubt, and confidence more clearly because the noise is gone. Each pause is a lens, sharpening your awareness and understanding of the dynamics around you. By listening with attention to the spaces between words, you learn more than any flood of speech could reveal. You begin to respond with precision and insight, and people sense that your words carry depth because they arrive after reflection, not haste. Finally, the pause transforms influence into subtle authority. People are drawn to someone who speaks with deliberation, whose words arrive after thought rather than in a rush. It signals intelligence, calm, and self-assurance, and it elevates every sentence that follows. The pause becomes a rhythm, a silent pulse that underlies communication, giving it gravity and resonance. In a world addicted to constant noise, learning to pause. Pause is revolutionary. It turns ordinary speech into presence, transforms attention into respect, and ensures that what you do say is remembered, felt, and carried long after the moment has passed. The seventh key point is that less talking leads to more action, and it begins the moment you stop trying to prove yourself with words alone. Most people fill their days with speech, explanations, promises, and plans, believing that talking demonstrates competence or authority. But words without follow-through are like dry soil. They look full on the surface, but nothing grows from them. Action, on the other hand, carries its own weight. It is tangible, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. When you speak less, you give space for your deeds to shine, and suddenly, people measure your intelligence and influence, not by what you say, but by what you accomplish. Action requires presence, and presence comes from silence. When you stop filling the world with words, you begin to notice what truly matters, what requires your energy, and where your efforts will have the greatest impact. Most conversations are cluttered with noise, opinions, advice, repetition, while the work that matters quietly waits for attention. Speaking less allows you to direct your focus to those moments where doing something real matters more than talking about it. Your efforts become sharper, more deliberate, and far more effective because they are not distracted by the endless urge to justify or explain yourself. When action becomes the measure of your influence, others naturally begin to notice your consistency. People tire of promises that float like clouds, evaporating before they ever touch the ground. But when you move quietly, steadily, and decisively, your presence becomes tangible. Your work speaks in a language that does not need interpretation. Each step you take, each task you complete, reinforces trust and credibility far more than words ever could. Action is visible. Words are often invisible. Choosing action over chatter is not just about efficiency, it is about building a reputation that is rooted in reality, substance, and reliability. Less talking also sharpens the quality of the actions themselves. Without the distraction of constant commentary, your energy is reserved for decisions, focus, and execution. You become more mindful of where to invest your effort, more aware of what truly requires your intervention, and more capable of following through to completion. There is a rhythm in this restraint, a discipline that grows quietly over time. People begin to sense it. They feel that you are deliberate, intentional, and grounded, that your work is guided by understanding rather than impulse, and that your influence comes not from talking about what should be done, but from action. Doing it, action rooted in silence, also cultivates patience and endurance. When you speak less, you are less concerned with immediate recognition or approval. You learn to endure the moments when progress is invisible, when no one notices your effort, and when results take time to emerge. Most people abandon action because they want to be heard, seen, or validated instantly. Silence allows you to focus on the long game, to build quietly, to layer effort upon effort, knowing that the fruits will arrive in their own time. In this patience, you develop a quiet strength that is almost imperceptible, yet profoundly powerful. Speaking less and acting more transforms influence into authenticity. Words can be rehearsed, polished, or inflated, but action cannot be faked. People intuitively feel when someone delivers results instead of promises, when someone embodies their own principles instead of just preaching them. This authenticity resonates deeply because it aligns reality with perception. When your actions consistently match your intentions, your presence becomes magnetic. People begin to trust not your speech, but your results. And trust is far more enduring than admiration, applause, or approval. Finally, action creates a legacy that words cannot. Words are fleeting, they are heard, debated, and forgotten, but action leaves traces in the world, in lives, and in opportunities. When you focus on doing rather than saying, you shape your environment, your relationships, and the impression you leave behind in ways that are undeniable. The quieter you speak, the louder your results resonate. By letting action take the lead, you demonstrate intelligence, discipline, and integrity naturally, without the need for explanation. Less talking becomes a catalyst for more influence, more respect, and a life that speaks for itself in ways no words could ever replicate. And in the end, the truth is simple, though it often takes quiet observation. To see it clearly, the weight of your presence is not measured by the noise you make, but by the thoughtfulness of your mind, the steadiness of your heart, and the choices you make in the spaces between words. Every pause, every act of listening, every moment of restraint adds depth to who you are, shaping the way the world experiences you in ways no flood of speech could ever achieve. When you speak less, you give yourself the chance to see more, understand more, and move through life with a clarity that is rarely found in those who rush to fill every silence. There is a stillness in speaking less that opens a door to wisdom, insight, and presence. It is not about withholding expression, but about honoring what is meaningful, about letting your words land fully when they do emerge. People begin to recognize the intelligence that comes from restraint, the quiet authority that comes from self-trust, and the magnetic influence that grows from action and observation. Each moment of silence is a space for reflection, a space to measure, a space to decide what truly deserves your energy and attention. And within that space, you discover something subtle but profound. That your power is not in convincing others, but in you, cultivating yourself. The more you act thoughtfully, listen attentively, and speak deliberately, the more your life becomes a mirror of what you value, and the more others cannot help but feel it. Influence flows quietly from clarity, from presence, from alignment between thought, word, and deed. It is not flashy, it is not loud, but it is unmistakable, and it cannot be ignored. You begin to see that life responds not to volume, but to depth, not to hurried chatter, but to intention. Every choice to pause, to observe, to ask, to act without announcing, to speak with care accumulates into a presence that carries authority, trust, and respect. It is steady, it is real. It is the kind of influence that lasts, not because it shouts the loudest, but because it endures. And so, as you carry this understanding into the moments ahead, know that silence is not emptiness. Restraint is not weakness. Less talking is not a retreat, it is a cultivation of clarity, presence, and purpose. Every measured word, every deliberate action, every pause that honors reflection slowly shapes a life that speaks in a language far deeper than speech alone. The quiet strength you cultivate will begin to shape the world around you in subtle but undeniable ways. You will notice it in the way people respond, in the space they give, in the trust they place, and in the respect that grows without announcement. The life you build through thoughtful presence will speak louder than any words you might have once felt, compelled to fill the air with. And when the day comes, and you are faced with the choice to speak or remain still, to act or to react, you will carry with you the understanding that less is not less at all, it is more. More focus, more clarity, more impact. And in that quiet, measured presence, you will find the intelligence, influence, and strength that speak without saying a word, leaving a mark that lingers long after the moment has passed.